y'all doing today? I'm good. Alright, so if you can all listen up. Alright, so you all know the expectations. Please be respectful to the presenter. Make sure you put all your phones away. Wait till the presenter is dismissed until the end of class. Okay, this presenter is actually pretty interesting. I am going to be introducing. Her name is...
Actually, I'm interesting.
She's really interesting. Her name is Cat Cvengros, Director of Development at Social Advocates for Youth in 2011. Born in Michigan, Cvengros attended Baldwin Wallace University in Cleveland for her undergraduate degree. She attended classes at the Santa Rosa JC before earning her MBA in 2011 from Dominican University in San Rafael. Prior to say, Cvengros managed operations and grants at committees on the shelterless cots in Petaluma and served as a United States Peace Corps volunteer in Armenia, where she opened the country's first domestic violence shelter. So if you can all please put your hands together for it.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kat. That's me. And I need someone to volunteer to be my timekeeper. Your job will be to, when I have 10 minutes left, to hold up both your hands, like 10. And then when I have 5. I got an orange shirt in the back. You are now my timekeeper. What's your name? Chelsea, thank you. Don't forget your job. I'll keep you here all afternoon because I'm actually pretty interesting. Thank you, Jonathan. So Jonathan did a great job of introducing me. I don't really have anything to add to that other than as the director of development at an organization. Does anybody know what that means when you're the director of development for a nonprofit? Anybody? I make it bigger, sort of. It means you do the fundraising. You do the communications to the community. It means you let everybody out there know what the people who work for that nonprofit do. SAY has a $4.2 million budget annually, and it's my job to secure those dollars. With those dollars, we hire people, a little bit older than you, to work with the youth we serve, and we work with homeless youth. And I'll tell you a little bit more about SAY a little later on. I've lived in Santa Rosa for 10 years. I'm really excited to be here because I really respect teachers, and so it's kind of fun to be in this role. If you can't hear me, please say so. So the first thing I want to do is do an activity. This is a picture. It's kind of hard to see, but that's an outhouse right there. There's some rocks on the roof because when it gets windy, the roof would blow off. And this is a picture from Armenia. I need 2 volunteers. And you're going to be speaking to this group, so I just want to give you fair warning. Not for long, like 30 seconds, but still, I need 2 volunteers. Okay, you right there with the wristband, come on up. You're actually coming up here. Okay, come on up. You actually, you can sit down. This wristband is coming up here. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. What are your names?
I'm Bobby.
Bobby? Carlos. This is Bobby and Carlos, if you guys don't know them. And so I'm going to give them a job, and I just want to hear their different perspectives. There's not going to be anybody who wins, although we're all judging them, I know. But, so what your job is you've just been put in a village in Armenia. You don't really know much about Armenia, probably. Maybe. Okay. All right. So what your job is you get there and the first thing you notice is there's no indoor plumbing. So when you need to go to the bathroom, you have to walk like outside in the cold, across the yard, around the cows to that little house there. And it's awful. So I want you to come up with a sense of urgency. So I want you to convince this crowd why they should use indoor plumbing and why you should be the one to lead them to do it. Okay? Now, I'll tell you when you're going to get about a minute while I'm talking to come up with your reasons. So be thinking while I'm speaking. Now, there's a couple reasons why you think this is important. One, there's no indoor plumbing, so it's hard to get a glass of water when you want it. So a lot of the kids in school are poorly hydrated. They don't walk around with these. They just don't drink all day long. Little like 8-year-olds. They just don't go to the bathroom all day because there's no bathroom at school, and the one out in the backyard is kind of gross, all right? So that's one thing you've noticed. Another thing you've noticed is that women spend hours carrying water. They all get their buckets and they walk out to get water from the local spigot, and they take it back. And they have to do this whenever the water starts running, and they don't know when that is. It's not scheduled. And then the last thing is that you've noticed that diarrhea is pretty common because the water they are drinking isn't clean. So these are 3 things you've noticed. This crowd, all of you nicely showered people, pretend that you're not, and you have never experienced indoor plumbing. You've never experienced a shower. You've never experienced a bath. It's always been sponge baths. And you've always lived like this. You don't know anything different, which is hard to imagine, being that we're American and we have just about everything we need, even when it's tough. So, this is your crew that you need to get behind you to make this change in this village, okay? So, just for a few seconds, tell them why they should follow you as you start indoor plumbing. And I want to start with Bobby.
Well, for myself personally, I think indoor plumbing is the best thing out there because you get water straight to your house, so you don't have to walk outside to get it. And also, it's sanitary because you don't spread disease, you do not get disease. And lastly, because I also actually did set up indoor plumbing in my villa back in Bulgaria. Didn't have indoor plumbing before, so I kind of know how to do it. And I know that it improved life a lot because outhouses smell, they spread disease, they get bugs, and it's just disgusting and no one wants to go over your house, and that's why it's the best to just get indoor plumbing and to be able to secure funds from it.
Great, thank you, Bobby. Hey, let's give him a round of applause. All right, Carla, you ready? Do you have anything that you could add things if you think maybe he didn't touch on something, but go for it.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, you don't want to walk around with barrels of water from miles to miles. You don't want to see your children dehydrated at school. You don't want to live in a place that's filled with bacteria, like outhouses, like my colleague here has mentioned, because diseases will spread. And frankly, that is one thing that I will not watch my children raise upon. I believe that we have to unite this level of cleanliness, and we have to guide hope and make sure that we are living in a clean society. Agua, water, the thing that we need to drink, hydrate, and also to clean our bottoms.
Excellent, excellent. Well, here's what I know. If I get tired of teaching this, I'm going to have those two come up because they did an outstanding job. So, knowing what you know about this village that they've just landed in, and knowing what you know about how hard life would be without water, they get some compelling reasons. And in particular, Carlos was very compelling. He was inspiring, right? Bobby has the experience. I mean, together they could totally do this. But here's something that's interesting, and this was me. I got into this village. It was called Yekhnatsorr in Armenia. There was no plumbing, and I learned some things. Turns out the women didn't really mind carrying the water. It got them away from their husbands. It also gave them time with their friends, which their jobs are very hard. They farm all the food. They grow all the animals that then turn into food that they use for their life. They don't work at a 40-hour-a-week job. They work over a 100-hour-a-week job. They raise the children, they clean the house, and they do all of that without running water. Diarrhea actually was really only common among the volunteers like me. And so from my perspective, it was awful. But actually, the Armenians weren't too bothered by it because they were used to the bacteria. I wasn't, my delicate little insides. Okay, they got spoiled here. They could benefit from home remedies, like some of them would get it, but it wasn't as rampant as I thought it would be. And then, really, they didn't shower that much, but they didn't care. We're used to showering a lot. How many of you showered today? Ah, you can see who didn't raise their hand. So, it's not as important. Your standards change. We're really adaptable. And when you don't have water for 2 weeks, well, you make do. I did. And I'm so grateful every time I turn on the hot water. So I think that the first thing I wanted to share with you is that in the Peace Corps, I learned something incredibly valuable, and that is that leadership starts with doing nothing. And that sounds counterintuitive, because you want to be like Carlos and get out there and just change and inspire, and I have a dream speech it. But actually, by and large, leadership really means you have to shut up and listen to your community and learn that they don't need what you think they need. What I learned in Peace Corps is that when you're a volunteer, you're put in a place for 2 years. You get to choose a region of the world. And then they put you in a village that you've never heard of often, with people that you've never seen before. My village had never seen an American. The only foreigner they'd ever seen were a few Russians. In Peace Corps, they tell you, when you sign up to be a volunteer, it's sort of like saying that you're going to put on a Big Bird outfit, walk to the middle of Times Square, walking up to total strangers saying, I'm here to help. I mean, the first thing people will do is freak out and back away, because New Yorkers are very skeptical. Here at SSU, you guys might embrace Big Bird doing that, I don't know. But it's hard, and it's supposed to be. The Peace Corps was designed to send people to villages and do nothing for a while. So what did I do when I did nothing? Well, first, I was there for 2 years and 3 months. 3 months was language training, then I did 2 years of what they call service. Of that 2 years, how long do you think I did nothing? I wasn't accomplishing really anything. How many days, weeks, months? Yeah. Okay, you're super smart. I'm just going to pack up and go. Yeah, about half of the time, I talked to old ladies. I interviewed villagers that didn't have any electricity or running water, and they didn't have any medical care. I talked to women who worked in rug-making factories. I worked with Habitat to volunteer just to see what they experienced, to get their perspective on what life was like. And then I learned that the students in the local nursing school really needed to learn about nutrition. You know, we have this food pyramid, and now it's like the food plate or something. I grew up with the food pyramid, right? And it tells you what you should eat and how much of it. And they don't have that in Armenia. We know it just because we know it, but they don't have that. That sort of education isn't a part of their culture, and it's not a part of their economy yet. And we're lucky enough to grow up with it, and it's just like, oh yeah, you know it. It's just a thing you know. And so I got to teach that there to nursing students. I'm not a nurse. I found out that they needed to learn about how to prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS. HIV was spreading very quickly when I was serving in Armenia. This looks like a party, but in fact it's a game where you take, right there in the middle, that glass has grape juice in it, and everybody else has water. It's clean. And what you do is you play this game, and you cheers, and you spill back and forth a little bit of water in the cups, and it shows you how quickly HIV can spread. That was something they needed to learn. Such a simple game, but they had to understand how quickly it could spread without taking the precautions necessary. The nurses needed to learn CPR. Seems fairly basic. I mean, if anybody asked any of you, even if you hadn't had the training, oh, what's CPR? You could do a pretty good job describing it, right? They really didn't know. The Bee Gees song wasn't popular there, so part of my preparation for this was learning really bad pop music, which also part of doing nothing, a benefit from it. So the litter on the countryside, these cars that are rusting near a river, I thought that was the most important thing, but they didn't. So it had to go on the back burner, and it was not my priority. That outhouse that you can't see very well right here, it's still there. This is a picture from last summer. And what I learned last summer going back is that through just listening and helping folks do what they wanted to do, what they identified as important, allowed them to get indoor plumbing. And now most everybody has it. Now most everyone has a really cool like pump system. I mean, it seems super fancy. We just turn on the faucet. Their water is held in tanks near their homes. They're about, you know, if you look about 50, 60 years ago in this country where we were with a lot of our amenities, that's where they are. And they're catching up rapidly. But it takes us listening to their needs as volunteers and foreign aid first, and then we can help them address the things that, oh, really do make life easier and better. But they were getting along just fine on certain levels. They really needed that education. So that domestic violence shelter that Jonathan mentioned was part of that. The women were afraid to talk about it, but it was also going on at a level that no one really wanted to admit. That was more important than water. So I'm going to bring it home. I work at Social Advocates for Youth, and other than Jocelyn, who else has heard of SAY? All right, we have some locals. Excellent. And does anyone want to share what you guys know about it? Just real briefly, anybody? No? Really? Do you know what it stands for? I'm like, I just said it. Okay. Well, Social Advocates for Youth has been around for 43 years. It was started in 1971. And has anyone heard of the Dream Center? Excellent, other than Jocelyn. So, in 1971, there was this problem. A group of defense attorneys were noticing that all of these teenagers were going to downtown Santa Rosa. They were running away from home. And they'd go to downtown Santa Rosa and start hanging out. And then they'd get picked up by the police, and then they'd get taken to juvenile hall. What do you think they'd done wrong? Louder. Shout it out. Existed. Loitering. Anything else? Do you think they did anything else wrong? Truancy. Okay. Largely you got it right. This back row here, you guys have got it going on, I'm telling you. Because you guys, all of you in the back row know the answers for things. But it was against the law to run away from home at the time. So a 14-year-old girl looking at her bedroom saying, it's safer for me tonight to be on the street than in this room, she would choose the street and then get criminalized for it. She hadn't stolen. She may not have even been truant or loitered. She was just trying to find another way. So SAY was formed to change that law. And out of it, a group of community leaders started advocating, hence the name, Social Advocates for Youth. And they created the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act with Congress, and it's still in effect today, which is a huge thing. It was a time of great change in our community. Our first year of operations, SAY served 12 kids with $10,000 from a house on Cherry Street. Now we serve 2,000 youth annually. Last year it was 2,200 youth. We do three things primarily: housing, counseling, and jobs. So a homeless young person will provide them housing. If they're running away because of abuse at home, we'll provide them counseling to work through that trauma. And every single young person I've talked to who's in that predicament says, if I could take care of myself, my life would be so much better if I only had a job. So we provide them education and job training. Some of the youth we've worked with attend school here at the JC. They do internships, paid and unpaid, throughout the community. Our counselors work with kids as young as 5, all the way up to 24. Since we were founded, we've served 35,000 youth in this community, which is, I think the size is a little bit smaller than Petaluma was 10 years ago. So a town the size of Petaluma has come through the doors of SAY for services because they're in need since it started. So what I want to do today is I'm actually going to focus on the first of the three things we do, housing. And I'm going to talk to you about the Dream Center. So, do any of you read the Press Democrat? I know you have a lot of other reading to do, so I'm not like going to guilt you for that. Because I remember being in college and all my professors were like, you should read the newspaper. I'm like, I have 45 chapters to read this week, so back off. So, I'm not going to guilt you into that, but had you read it, and if you were to go online and search Dream Center, you'll see all sorts of neat articles and some really good pictures, okay? So, I'm going to use, in the chapter that I know all of you read in preparation for today's lecture, I'm only going to cover one thing, so you all better read it, because I'm just covering Cotter's 8 stages of, the 8-stage process of creating major change, okay? I love this process. It was great for me to read the chapter. See, I read the chapter and you didn't. Because I remember learning this 8-stage process getting my MBA. So this is something that people who are getting their master's in business learn, and it's so helpful. It lays out everything you need to know. I mean, your teacher's gonna want you to learn all the other things in this chapter, but that's my favorite part. You should not use that necessarily as your excuse for not knowing it in your exam. Kat said that's her favorite part. So this first part of it, does anyone know? The first stage of Cotter's 8 stages of change? You guys really didn't read it, did you? It's create urgency. So, as one of my heroes says, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. This is Rahm Emanuel. He's the mayor of Chicago. He worked in the White House for a while. He was quoted when he was working in the White House saying this. So I'm going to start with the crisis SAY faced. And I'm going to take you through how we went through those 8 stages. There's lots of ways we could have improved. I'm not saying we had those 8 stages laid out at the beginning, but now that I look at it, we probably should have. Our crisis was really unique. Our crisis was about homelessness in Sonoma County. How many, okay, think about the age range of 12 years old, like little kid, 12-year-olds. Sometimes I'm just saying. That's like a 5. Anyway, 12-year-olds to 24-year-olds. Think about that age range, okay? Big age range. There's a lot of homeless folks in that age range in Sonoma County. How many do you think there are tonight sleeping on the streets of Sonoma County in that age group, 12 to 24? Shout it out. 2,500, 4% of what? Of the population. Oh, that's a really neat way to put it. Any other guesses? I got a 2,500, I got 4,000. 6,000, any other numbers? Going once, going twice. The closest number is actually, I think it's like 4%. And here's why. 2,500 is closer than 6,000. Each night in Sonoma County, there is 1,128 young people aged 12 to 24 sleeping outside. They're not in beds, they're not in shelters, outside. 95% of these young people are outside. 5% of them find shelter beds, find support. What's interesting is that here in Sonoma County, this number is higher per capita than San Francisco. So if you looked at how many young people in that age group are homeless in San Francisco, and you see a lot of homeless people when you're in San Francisco, we have more per capita. In fact, Sonoma County has more than anybody in the entire nation. When you look at how beautiful our county is, you wouldn't guess that we have the most homeless youth in the nation. That's a crisis that we were facing. We couldn't believe it. It started in 2009 when we started this count. The first year we ever counted how many homeless young people there were, it was 268. Okay, that just informed us. We didn't know what to do with that number. 2 years later, we counted again. It was a 168% increase. And then, 2 years later, last year, we counted, and this is counting on a January morning. We start at 4:30, and we counted 1,128. How many of you live at home? Raise them higher. I want to see it. Okay. How many of you live maybe away from home, but your parents help you out with rent or food or your car or gas? What would you do if you didn't have any of that support? You'd cry. You would cry, right? I encourage you to be proud of the fact that your parents are helping you. It's common in American culture to say, I've done it on my own. You've never done anything on your own, contrary to what anybody tells you, and I'll argue with you about this after class. There's always somebody who's pushed you at some point in your life to have the resilience to get through what you're doing. We rely on our community, and when we're all alone, we find ourselves crying. And then, that's what we call rock bottom in our industry. When you really feel like there's nothing that can help you. Well, when there's nothing that can help you, that's when SAY is there for a lot of the youth in our community, because they don't have that support from your parents, like you do from your parents. And for those of you that are eking it out on your own, I applaud you. And I applaud your bosses that have hired you for multiple jobs, and I applaud all of the hard work that you have to do what you're doing. And for those of you that are getting your parents' help, I applaud you too. Because it's not like that's any less hard. What you're doing, going to school, making your life better, is a huge deal. And I know hundreds of kids who would dream to sit right here in this room. And so it's exciting to see you in here, alert, paying attention. I know you're all going to go read the chapter after this because you're going to feel so inspired about education. It's going to be great. So the reason I brought all that up is I want to talk about those kids that don't have that support. Our sense of urgency came from those young people. So the second part Cotter says that's important when you're building change, leading people through change, is building the guiding team. So 2 years ago when we found this number, when it first went up to 701, we thought, that's huge. If at the time, 701 just seemed just gigantic. And we thought, we can't let this happen. That's not okay. Just like 43 years ago, it wasn't okay that kids were getting put in jail because they were running away from home. Now it's not okay that we have 700 young people sleeping outside in our county. So we started asking our friends what we could do. Here's a list of some of the folks that we put on our guiding team. And I want to point out one of the most important groups that we looked at, which is right down here. The youth that participated in our programs. The youth that wanted to participate in our programs and were on our wait list. The youth that had graduated years before and come back to give us insight. We needed to put together the guiding team because without all of their different perspectives, without the perspectives of our founders who'd been through this 40 years ago, without the perspectives of our donors to find out what they would continue to support, and our board of directors to find out why they lead our organization in the first place, we weren't going to succeed at making something real. So we started saying, what can we do? And this was actually really fun because we had these grand visions. We said, well, we want to house these youth. We want to find a way for them to get that stability so that they can go to school, so they can have that job, so they can climb out of that cycle that their family has been in for generation after generation. So the third part of the 8 stages is getting the vision right. Now, there really aren't that many new ideas in the world. Most of the time we just copy something somebody's done before, put a new package around it and call it ours. And that's good because it makes us continuing, it keeps us innovating. But we knew somebody else had done this. We knew there were homeless youth all over the country, and we knew somebody had said, we can do more. And so we visited Nashville, we visited Portland, we visited Los Angeles. We visited cities all over the country to find out what they had done so we could copy it. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel, as they say. Because there's best practices, and we wanted to steal them because they would benefit our youth who are homeless. So at first, it seemed easy building this vision. And so this is a picture of a gal walking up the stairs, and there's a sign back here that says Youth Opportunity Center, and we thought, that's a great name! We're gonna call whatever we do the Youth Opportunity Center. We're gonna create a center. And right around that time, one of our supporters told us about the old Warwick Hospital. Anybody know where Warwick Hospital is? All right, representing. Probably most of you don't, because the last time it was operational, y'all were in high school or even middle school. It's been vacant for a long time. They started actually closing a lot of it down in 2005 and shuttered it up in 2008. It's in Bennett Valley. It's a 52,000 square foot building, and it's empty. And we went on a tour of this building, and can you imagine what it was like to walk down the halls of this old hospital? Partially, it was creepy because it's been closed for 5 years. But also, it was room after room after room, empty, with bathrooms and showers and beds in them. And at the time, there were 700 young people your age sleeping outside. There's 200 of them in here right now. just to put that in perspective. And we thought, what if we could use this space? Oh, it was exciting. That's when we had like the Carlos mentality of like, we will do this, it will be amazing. We have dreams, it's gonna be great. I have a dream for my children, that sort of thing. It was wonderful. And we talked to the youth who were helping us out with this, and they said, you can't call it the Youth Opportunity Center, because that name sucks. So they gave us the name Dream Center, which totally fit, because they said, if I have a place to live that's safe, and I have the support that I've never had in my entire life, I'll be able to achieve my dreams. So that's what we called it. So the next year was really amazing, because we had this vision, and it was to do basically what SAY does now. We do 3 things. What are those 3 things? Scream them out. Excellent. Housing, counseling, jobs. So we thought, well, we want to do those 3 things, but we're going to do them at this space, in this big space, all consolidated, and then we'll expand housing so we can provide housing to more youth than we can currently. Because right now, all told, we have about 35 beds. It's not enough at all. And some of them are restricted just for teenagers, and some of them are restricted just for foster care kids. And so we had to think about how we could serve more youth. And so we thought, what if we put 100 beds in this facility? What if we did so much and we had these really crazy big plans? And then we had our first meeting with the community. And so what happens when you get a building that was a hospital? It's zoned as a hospital, and there's only certain things you can put in there. And so we had to go to the city of Santa Rosa, because it's in the city limits, and get it rezoned. And we had to apply for a permit that would allow us to do the things there that we wanted to do there. So we had to get this permission from them. That permission required us to participate in democracy. And democracy is messy. And so we went to the city, and we're going to have our first public meeting, which was basically the first time we say, hey, community, we're thinking about doing this thing, and we're going to start planning, and in so many months, we're going to put together an application, and that will be the official thing. But until then, we're just kind of seeing what you think. Most of the time this happens, and if you drive around Santa Rosa and other cities, you'll see these big blue signs like the size of that table up in front of a property, and it says, public notice. And it tells you all these boring things that are going to happen there. Nobody goes to those meetings. I mean, very rarely. Sometimes they do, it's like a big deal and people know about it, but most of the time, there's like a couple people. So we thought, there's not going to be many people at this meeting, because nobody really cares about an old hospital, and we've been doing this work for 43 years, so whew, man, that was smooth. Anyway, so we thought, nobody's going to be there. 63 people came to the first meeting, which in a room full of 200 doesn't seem like a lot. But when you think 4 people are going to be there and you're going to be out before dinner time, and actually 63 people show and you're there for 3 hours, we were kind of floored. And that's when we really started creating the vision in a more codified way. So the creating the vision part of Cotter's plan, he just puts it down like it's a step, like you know what the vision is, and you're just going to go do it. When you're a leader through change, that vision is going to change in so many ways. Your high level one won't. You know, we wanted to do what we do now. Housing, counseling, jobs. We wanted to help that increase of homeless youth. We wanted to do that. But all the details still had to get worked out. And in this process, we had to involve the community. So it started with how many units will be at the Dream Center. Well, you can ignore all these. Really, it's about this. First, we thought, let's serve 10% of the youth that are homeless. And by this time, we knew the new number, 1,128. So we thought, what if we could put in 100 beds, 100 rentable units that are affordable for teenagers and young adults in the new Dream Center? And the community members said, that's too many. And we thought, oh, because it's right next door to them. Imagine 100 people just moving in next door. It'd be kind of loud. It'd be kind of worrying about who's moving in. They don't know you. They don't know your 99 friends. So we were like, okay, it's too many people. And so we went back to that group of youth. We said, they said it's too many people. What do you guys think? We were thinking 100. And they said, that's too many. I don't want to feel like I'm in an institution. I want to feel like I'm in an apartment complex. I want to feel like there's space. I want to feel like I'm part of a community. 100 seems huge and scary. And so then we went back to the drawings of the building and we looked at how many beds were there when it was a hospital, and there were 69 beds when it was a hospital, and we knew we had to take down some walls inside, and so we settled on 63 units. But here's the thing, not right away even. Because we thought, well, we can't just go right to 63. We have, like I said, we have 35-ish right now, and that would be a huge jump. So we thought, let's just start with 40. We have a building a half a mile from the Dream Center that has 25 units in it. So we thought, 15 more? That's reasonable, we can handle that. So we're gonna start with just 40. And then over the years, we can incrementally increase. The second year to 47, then to 55, then the maximum of 63. Remember how I said we'd have to get a permit from the city that would allow us to do the things we wanted to do? That would go in our permit, and we'd never be able to exceed that number in that space unless we went and applied again. Democracy is messy. And so, it turns out, is leadership and making your vision. The things we were going to do in the housing portion, and remember, this is just a portion of the building, but it was causing the most complex issues, and it was raising the most fear in the neighborhood because they didn't know who we were and they did not know who our youth were. They didn't think, oh, they're studious SSU kids. They thought, oh, they're coming from probation and they're bad kids. And sometimes they thought, oh, they are good SSU kids, but when you put 100 of those kids together, it hits the fan. So we just need to know there's some controls in place because we don't know these people and we don't know you, SAY, who wants to run it. So that was part of the conversation. We had to tell people about who we were. That vision was a lot of education. We had to tell them about what we wanted to do there. So Tamayo Village is that 25-unit facility I was telling you about that's been in existence for 9 years. It's like a 9-year pilot project. What we do there is employment, education services. We have the youth that live there. They sign a contract saying they'll volunteer in the community 20 hours a week. Imagine if somebody told you right now, on top of everything else you're doing, that you had to give back 20 more hours. Would you be able to do it? If your housing depended on it, would you be able to do it? Yep. So they do. We got folks that are going to school full-time, working full-time, and they do that. It's a drug and alcohol-free facility. That's something that people wondered about. They're like, wait a minute, you're going to have all these parties. I've been out to SSU. I know what it's like. And case management. And this is huge, this case management business here. Because one of the youth who walked through that building, that hospital with us, we said to her, we said, what would you want here? And she said, I want, thank you, everything I didn't get around the dinner table. She never had a dinner table to get anything around. She didn't get raised. She was kind of on her own. I'm going to skip that. So, the Dream Center is affordable housing for youth. There are some emergency units, but you still have to apply to get in them. That was something we had to tell the community. It was a place where we do what we already do: housing, counseling, and jobs. And we had to be very clear that our vision was not to have a soup kitchen. It was not to have a homeless shelter. It was not to have drop-in services. It was not to have a place where youth were mandated to live by their probation officers. People who want to live there and participate have to apply. And then they have to do all this stuff to stay there. What was amazing was all of the community feedback that was incorporated during this period of time. From that first meeting with 63 people, over time, we changed many elements, we tweaked others, we put in whole new things that we'd never done before, and this is a list of some of them. Some of the ones that were really interesting involved safety. Folks were concerned about who was going to be moving into their neighborhood. When we talk about young people who are homeless or who were at risk of homelessness, they think, well, they must have been involved in some sort of criminal activity at some point, or some of them may have been. And it's true. When you're homeless, you get desperate. And when you're desperate, you'll do anything. So about 10% of the youth that we've housed over the last 9 years at Tamayo Village have come to us referred by probation. And if through the application process they're a good fit for the program, they can live there. Sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it does, but that's the way life is. We had to look at safety, and the community said, we want you to do criminal background checks on everybody who's going to live in this facility. And we were like, ooh, we've never done that. And so we went to that group of youth and we said, what do you think about that? And they said, do it. I want to know that 2 doors down from me, you know what they've been through. That doesn't mean if you have a background, you're not in. It means we know about it. Now, violence and all of that is taken into consideration. And we don't have time to get into that today, but it was a really eye-opening experience to talk to those 2 key community groups, the neighbors and the youth, and see how they aligned. There were a lot of other ways that we looked at making our project fit the community, because what we had to do was balance the needs of the youth with the desires of the community. And I use those 2 words very specifically. Needs of the youth, desires of the community. And it was our job to make those meet. So the next part that Cotter says you have to do is empower action, or communicate for buy-in. That was about a year. Our youth, our staff, our advocates out in the community, they talked to the Santa Rosa Junior College Board, they came out here, spoke at SSU, the YMCA, Community Action Partnership, a bunch of homeless organizations, churches, the Active 2030 Club, Kiwanis, Rotary, you name it. We were out there telling people about this plan. Cotter says you have to give people moments where they feel like they're a part of a movement, empowering action in the community. What we did is we had a walk in December. It was raining. It was like the first rain of the rainy season. We had 200 people come out. And they walked through downtown Santa Rosa in support of our kids' dreams. You want to encourage a little bit of risk in your supporters, in the people that are following you as the leader. And this did that. Along the way, you have to create short-term wins. Now, they can look like a lot of different things, but what's important about a short-term win, and this is good for you to think about too, if you have a goal for your life, celebrate along the way. Celebrate when you finish a class as a part of your 10-year education plan, because you got to keep yourself excited and keep yourself going. One thing that's important to do with the short-term wins is visibly recognize those that are following you. And in following you, they will help move the movement. They will help lead with you. This looks like a lot of things. This is a picture of one of the community meetings. We had 300 people come to this one. You can see all the shirts that say yes. They said, say yes to dreams. Community members came, took that risk of identifying themselves in support of our homeless youth, of the youth that are most at risk, and they participated in this. They came to community dinners at Tamayo Village. They took our kids out to speak. They made phone calls to the neighborhood. They wrote letters to the editor. And this is like a marathon. It doesn't stop. This you can't see on purpose because it's at night, and all these are candles. A lot of the young people and myself, we spoke at churches. And the churches in that neighborhood in Bennett Valley came together and they had a prayer vigil. And 70 people in the rain got together and prayed, which was a really interesting thing because SAY is a nonprofit. We don't do that, religious organization thing. But to have all of these groups following and rooting us and taking care of our kids was a huge moment. Thanks, Chelsea. And then you got to make change stick. This can happen in a number of ways. For us, one way that it happened was at the city council meeting just a couple weeks ago. The city council unanimously approved this project. This is after being threatened with lawsuits, being threatened with being voted out of office, with SAY being threatened, with our history and our integrity threatened. After over a year and a half of working with the community and changing that vision, we were able to present something to the city that was better than when we started because we didn't do anything for a while. We just listened. And the city approved it. And you think, all right, we're done. No way. We have a whole lot, another 43 years ahead of us. And the next steps include more community involvement. Part of our use permit and part of being a leader is taking that input. You can never be a leader without critical feedback. And making change stick is part of that cycle. This is going to happen. The Dream Center will happen. And there was a time when we really thought it wouldn't. There was a time when we really thought those kids would stay on the street, and they're not going to anymore because people cared and they followed the movement. And now it's our job to continue that communication. So we will, every 3 months, have meetings with our neighborhood. Those same people who are against the project, we're going to be meeting with them every 3 months. And we're starting this even before we move in because we're not even moving in until the renovation is done. So I want to end today's lecture with this quote from Cotter, since I only focused on that one part of your chapter. Management is about coping with complexity. Leadership is about coping with change. You need managers. Once you set that vision, you need those managers to handle all of that detail and to make sure their teams follow that vision. Whether it's through change or not, the management is so key. And sometimes as a leader, you'll go back and forth from being a manager to a leader. And you'll kind of swing back and forth when you need to instill change. But you have to remember that you can't do that without looking at the small stuff, as long as it aligns up with that vision, that higher level vision. So I want to say thank you to Chelsea, to Bobby, to Carlos, and to those of you who screamed out answers to my questions. And I'll stick around for questions, to answer any of yours.